Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Yashoda Hospitals, I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar on the topic triple mutant virus variant and the current scenario. The avalanche of many cases had led to speculate about this mutant virus. Is it more infectious? Does that invade the human system? How different is it from the previous strains? Well, we are going to discuss all these parameters today. I'm Dr. Lakshmi, and let me introduce Dr. Mona Lisa Sahu, infectious disease consultant from Yashoda Hospitals, and Dr. Bharat Raj, consultant from Emergency Department, Somajiguda, and Dr. Suresh, ER HOD, moderator for this session. I welcome you all.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. Sahu ma'am.
Yeah, Dr. Mona Lisa ma'am, we can start.
Good evening, everyone. Now that we are going through the second wave of the pandemic, there are many variant strains that have been detected, and we will, in the coming slides, we will see how these are significant and what are the various strains that are circulating over the world and in our country as well. As we know, this is the SARS-CoV-2 virus is a RNA virus, and the viruses are constantly changing through the mutation. And a variant is one which has one or more mutations that makes it different from the other variants that are circulating. The genetic variants of SARS-CoV-2 have been emerging around the world during the pandemic. And the various variants can be detected by several methods, like the sequence-based surveillance, which is the best method, the gold standard, and laboratory studies and epidemiological investigations can also be undertaken to detect these. Next slide, please. The nomenclature of the various variants is by two systems. The next strain nomenclature of the clades, and the other one is the phylogenetic analysis of the circulating lineages, known as the pangolin, which the acronym which stands for the phylogenetic assignment of named global outbreak lineages. The next strain, in the next strain nomenclature of the variants, the viruses have been divided into the clades and further into the subclades. A clade is one in which it reaches a frequency of about 20% in the global circulation at any point of time. And the clades have been further subdivided into the subclades, in which the nomenclature is by the name of the clade followed by the specific nucleotide mutation which defines the clade. Currently, there are 5 clades circulating across the world. The 19A, the 19 stands for the year in which it was discovered, like in 2019. The 19A, which was the original strain from the Wuhan, and followed by the 19B, and then came the various others, the 20A, 20B, 20C. All of them which are circulating across the world. And now almost the 19A strain is no more detected. Next slide, please. This is the phylogenetic representation of the next strain. We can see the initial 19A from which the other strains originated, 19B and then the 20A, which further divided into 20B, 20C, and further on. And this is the phylogenetic tree, which shows the various variants. And we can see that the original 19A that was there has almost been no more circulating, and the other several variants are circulating, which can be seen by different colors of the dots. And in this we can see the lower diagram, we can see that the initial 19A which was there is no more circulating, and the other 20A, 20B have taken its place, and the various newer variants are circulating across the world. Then comes the pangolin nomenclature, in which it is divided into lineages. A lineage is defined as one which is defined as a genetically related strains circulating in a particular geographical area. It is a hierarchical system which reflects the evolutionary history of the virus. The initial one was the 19A was represented as the A, which further on went to B, then B.1, B1.1, B1.1.1. These are the various lineages. And when it comes to like B1.1.1.1, like 4 ones, to decrease the confusion, it is nomenclature as C.1. So these are the various lineages that have been circulating. And this is the pangolin nomenclature. And this one is the most commonly used. Now, there is a global platform where all the sequences of the various whole genome sequencing of the viruses, the COVID virus, are submitted. That is known as the GISAID, which stands for Global Initiative for Sharing of All Influenza Data. On this platform, this is an open access where we can access the genomes of the COVID-2 all across the world. Until date, about 12 lakh samples, whole genome sequences have been submitted to it. And in this diagram, we can see the latest global distribution of the various clades and variants across the world. As we can see that the 19A, which is the darker blue one, is like no more circulating, and the other further clades have taken over all across the globe. This is the diagram which represents, which shows the genome of the virus SARS-CoV-2, which is about 28,000 base pairs. The virus is the nucleic acid is single-stranded RNA surrounded by the lipid envelope on which there are the spike proteins. The spike proteins consist of two structures, the S1 and S2 part. And the S1 part contains the receptor binding domain in which the receptor binding motif is present, and most of the mutations of the spike protein occur in the receptor binding motif of the receptor binding domain. So the receptor, the S1 part of the receptor binding domain binds to the ACE2 receptor on the host cells, and there occurs fusion, cell fusion, and thus the virus gets into the human host cell. Now that there are so many variants circulating, we need to have a little bit idea of how the nomenclature goes about. So the mutation consists of substitutions as well as deletions. In substitutions at a particular position, if it is nomenclature D614G, it means that substitution has occurred in the spike protein, the S, and the D stands for there is a single letter code for the various amino acids, and D stands for aspartic acid and G for glycine, which means, so SD614G stands for there is a substitution in the aspartic acid to glycine in the spike protein in the 614 region. And the deletions are also represented by the delta 69 by 70, which means that deletion has occurred at the position 69 and 70. So the circulating UK strain, that is by the Pango lineage, it comes to B1.1.7. In the next strain nomenclature, it is 20I oblique 501 YBI. The CDC has named the various viruses that have variants that have been circulating into three groups. That is the variants of interest, variant of concern, and the variants of high consequence. The variants of interest are those which have the changes occur in the receptor binding, reduced neutralization of the antibodies, and also there is a reduced efficacy of the treatments, and there is some impact on the potential diagnostic modalities. The variants of concern are furthermore like they cause severe disease, and more the antibody neutralization is more hampered, and the diagnostics targets are further hampered. And the variants of high consequence are more into the course, more over the variant of concern, and there is like total failure of the diagnostics, and the antibody response is not at all neutralized. So the currently circulating variants, the UK strain, the UK variant, the South African variant, the Brazil variant, and the California variant, they have been designated as the variants of concern, whereas the one of the New York have been designated as the variant of interest. The double mutant virus that has been in discussion since quite some time is designated as a variant of interest, and the triple mutant variant is a variant under investigation yet. The variants of concern that have been circulating in the world are the four major ones: the UK variant, the South African variant, the Brazilian variant, and the Californian variant. The UK variant, which is designated as B1.1.7, was first diagnosed in September 2020 in the whole genome sequencing, and it contained 17 mutations, of which 8 of them were in the spike protein region, and the N501Y and the P681H, these are the mutations most commonly seen. It was associated with about 50% increased spread, and also increased lethality was associated with it. There were minimal chances of reinfection, and escape effect on the monoclonal body antibodies was also minimal in this. And it did not have much impact on the efficacy of the vaccines as well. Whereas the South African variant, which is designated by B1.1.351, it was detected in August 2020, and it has 9 mutations in the genome. It is more transmissible and has higher infectivity rate. The reinfections are a bit more than those with the UK variant, and the escape effect on the monoclonal antibodies is also more with these. The AstraZeneca vaccine is not much effective against these South African variant, but in the lab setup, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are effective against it. The Brazilian variant, which has been detected only in a few cases in the Indian setup, it emerged in December 2020, and it had 16 mutations. As we can see in all of these three variants of concern, the N501Y mutation was common in all of the 3 of them. It is the Brazilian variant is associated with a moderate amount of reinfections, and escape effect is also seen in some of them. The Californian variant is the latest one in the variants of concern, and it was detected in the January 2021. And it is detected to be more 20% more transmissible, and has a significant escape effect on the monoclonal antibodies. Now coming to the double mutant variant, which is designated as the B1.617. It is, although it is known as a double mutant, but it is like a misnomer because it has 15 mutations, and it is sometimes known as a double mutant because of the 2 spike mutations, the L452R and the E484Q, which have already been seen in the other circulating lineages across the world. And these 2 mutations have been associated with immune escape properties and possible high infectivity. As you can see in this the below diagram, the genetic variants of the genome structure of the B1.617, that is the double mutant lineage, there are 6 mutations in the spike protein region, which contains the 2 commoner ones, the L452R and E484Q, occurring together. That's why known as the double mutant. And this is the other one is the structure of the spike glycoprotein, which is showing the 6 mutations on it. Now coming to the situations of the mutants and variants in India. India till date has sequenced almost around 10,500 cases. Whole genome sequencing has been done out of the total 17 million cases, which accounts for only about 0.1% of the total number of cases, as compared to the UK, where almost 10% of the strains are sequenced. Of these, the 10,500 samples sequenced, 771 variants have been detected. Variants of concern have been detected, and the most common one being the UK variant, which has been detected in 736 cases, and Punjab being the state where it is most commonly detected, and also from Telangana, Delhi, it has been detected. Other states, it has been detected. The South African variant has been detected in 34 cases, Telangana being contributing the most. And the second double mutant variant has been detected in about 206 samples from Maharashtra, and it is now currently detected in 9 of the states. This is the slide from taken from the GIS AID site, which shows the various lineages circulating in India. Of the 4,060 strains that are submitted from January to April, out of them 428 strains were shown to have the mutant variant. The most common one being the UK variant. This is the GSID slide from showing the samples isolated from Telangana. 27 of the samples which are sequenced, they showed the South African variant of concern. This image shows the distribution of the double mutant variant across the various states. It was initially detected in Maharashtra, and now, as we can see in this picture, the two circulating strains are the UK strain, which is shown by the blue, and the double mutant virus, which is shown by the yellow. So as we can see, the yellow part is seen in almost 9 states across the country, along with the UK variant, which is also seen in many of the states. And in Telangana, we can see that mostly it is the South African variant. The double mutant virus was first detected in the 5th of October from a sample from Maharashtra, and currently it is detected in the 9 states of the country. And as of 24th April, it is already being detected in 21 countries across the world, including UK and the US, where it was detected in February 22nd. There has been a recent publication by the ICMR on the 24th of April, that is just a day before yesterday, in which they have tested about 598 samples from the Maharashtra over the period from December to March, and they have detected that the phylogenetic analysis showed that the predominant clade circulating in the Maharashtra during this period was the double mutant strain, and it had the 6 signature mutations on the spike protein, which are enumerated here. And the mutation at the 452, 484, and the 681 position, they have already been seen in the other circulating lineages across the world. It is also, this double mutant variant has also been associated with increased ACE2 binding and decreased neutralization of the antibodies. Decreased efficiency in the neutralization of the antibodies. This is the detailed study, the analysis of the study. We can see that during the period from December 20 to March 21, the most common mutations that were seen were in the region of D614G and the E484Q, and these have been associated with increased transmissibility and immune escape phenomenon. The below picture shows the map of Maharashtra, which is showing that in almost all of the districts, these mutant strain, which is represented by the green, has been circulating. Of the 598 lineages, genomes that were sequenced, the B1.617, that is the double mutant variant, contributed to about 273 of them, that is 45% of the cases, and the B1.1.7, that is the UK variant, contributed to about 5% of the cases. Now, there has been like a question whether the vaccine would be efficacious against the double mutant variant. The ICMR has released the statement that the Covaxin is definitely effective against the UK way, the double mutant variant, and the director of the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Dr. Akesh Mishra, has tweeted that in a controlled study, the Covishield is also effective against the double mutant variant, as is seen by the plaque neutralization assay test. So it's a good news, like both of the vaccines that are available in India are effective against the double mutant variant as of the data presently available. Now coming to the triple mutant variant, which has come to the limelight only like a couple of days, since a couple of days. It has been, the nomenclature by the Pango lineage is, it is nomenclatured as B1.618, further after the second double mutant variant. It is the sub lineage of B.1, and it was earliest detected in a sample of West Bengal in as early as the 25th of October. It is like a misnomer called the triple mutant because it has almost 18 mutations, and it includes two of the mutations in the spike protein region, the D614G and the E484K, and two deletions of the amino acids at the position H145 and Y145. So this is the genome of the triple mutant variant, showing the various mutations at the 18 sites. This is the structural form of the spike protein, which shows the mutations at the E484 and D614 region of the spike protein, and two deletions at the Y145 and H146 in the S1 region of the receptor binding domain of the spike protein. So the functional consequence of these modifications, mutations in the spike protein, results in that the two deletions are associated with immune escape, and the two substitutions are associated with increased infectivity and a major immune escape variant, the E484K, which was already detected in the other circulating lineages across the world. But these are very preliminary things, and much for further study needs to be put into it, so that we can designate that this virus is the triple mutant is definitely more infectious or has a potential of more immune escape than the others. The triple mutant has been detected as early as October 2020 in the West Bengal, as we can see by the green bar, and the contribution of it has been increasing over the months. And in the February and March, it contributes to about 20% of the cases isolates from the West Bengal. These are the very few data that I could collect regarding this lineage triple mutant variant, which has been in news like for a few days. So further study needs to be put into it to know all the properties of this triple mutant variant, whether it is associated with increased immune escape and increased transmissibility and decreased efficacy of the vaccines. So with so many variant viruses circulating in the country, there are certain features of this severity of the second wave of the pandemic going on, which could be attributed to the variant viruses. Like the precautions that the people had been using were decreased since November, but there was no sharp rise in the cases. But there has been the recent spurt of cases since the February, which shows that it could be coinciding with the increased spread of the variant virus. The family members of the infected people, all of the family members are affected, which is unlike the first wave, which could also suggest that the infectivity of the variant virus is high. The healthcare workers who were working throughout the previous year in close contact with the patients are developing the disease and getting sicker this time. So it could also be due to the variant virus. More children are getting infected. The younger patients are getting sick. And infection is occurring in some of the patients despite the 2 doses of the vaccine, even after 8 weeks have elapsed, which can suggest immune escape, though it is not very common. And the cases of reinfection are quite increasing. So all these can be ascribed to the development of the various variant viruses that have been circulating. So in the summary, it is in the very nature of the virus to mutate and thus survive. And these mutations and variants were anticipated quite early, and by the whole genome sequencing, we just can anticipate what is going to happen, and thus develop the measures for that. And it has become a reality now. The ones that were anticipated are in reality now. It has led to the surges in various countries and decreased vaccine efficacy in the other countries of the world. And India is facing this situation right now. The double mutant variants contribute about 45% of the cases, as was shown in the ICMR study. The other variants of concern across the world, the UK variant, South African variant, have been quite in circulation in India and different states. The triple mutant variant, which is detected, has been detected in 3 of the states. It was initially detected in West Bengal, and now it has also been detected in the samples of Delhi and Maharashtra. So the current need of the hour is that we should go for more and more samples for whole genome sequencing, and more so in the cases where the patients are developing the disease, if they had the previous year also, that is in the case of reinfections, and those patients who are developing the disease after vaccination, so that we can know whether it is a variant virus and immune escape phenomenon is occurring. And we should follow the COVID appropriate behavior, that is strict masking and social distancing. And the very best method by which the country can get across is quick ramp up of the vaccination against COVID, so that we can have a herd immunity. And even with these variants, the vaccine is definitely efficacious, as it decreases the disease severity in most of them. Thank you.
So thank you, Doctor, for providing an insight on this novel strain. And now moving on to the next session, we have Dr. Bharat Raj to talk about the current scenario and strategies about this COVID-19. Dr. Bharat, you can start your presentation.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Today's my topic is strategies to tackle triple mutant virus in India. So this is the recent data as per today's morning. So the actively infected patients are nearly.
Dr. Bharat, yeah, 1 second, please. Sorry. Could you please share the screen? Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, sir.
Could you share the screen, please? Your slides, yeah.
Presentation.
Presentation, your
Yes,
presentation.
sir. Can you see it?
No, we can't see, sir. Share screen.
Okay. Can you see it, sir? No. No.
1 second, sir. It's getting open. Yes.
Yes, good to go. Yes.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Sorry. This is the today's data today's data from the morning. Currently the active patients are 2,88,513, and when it comes to the deceased patient, 1,97,880. So and the recovered patients are 14,54,342. So as go on. So what we know so far about the triple mutant virus, first we have noticed it in West Bengal, so we call it as a triple mutant virus, or also called as B1618. So it is spreading rapidly in West Bengal, and it has been significantly increasing in its share in the state genome also. However, it is too early to say about the virus, triple mutant virus, and but it is more infectious and more people are getting sick very fast, and it has a major mutation that helps to evade immune system, and which leads to the compromising, most probably going to compromise our vaccine efficacy also. So experts are saying it needs more study to know about this variant. Moreover, we have to go for mass genome sequencing. That is what the madam also has said previously. So when it comes to how are we going to deal in the emergency, so each and every epidemic has in a country goes through 4 phases. The first one is introduction and emergence in the community. Second one is local transmission, and third one is amplification, and the fourth one is reduced transmission immunity. So as in emergency, we are going to face the phase 2 and phase 3. So according to based on phase 2 and phase 3, we have suggested a system of 2-step triage. So this is how it is going to be in the hospital settings in Yashoda. So as soon as in the hospital entrance itself, we'll have a small information like placards and posters. We'll just keep it in front of the hospital entrance, And we'll keep flashing signboards also directing the patients where to go. We have two entrances. So one is for the COVID-19 or the patients who are all referring from the other hospitals, and the other entrance will be the normal non-COVID patients. So the new entrance, which is we have designated for COVID, when they come there, we pre-triage them, and the suspected COVID-19 cases, we'll just isolate them according to the triage, maybe in ICU, wards, and routine quarantine. In non-COVID emergency, we pre-triage the patients, and according to that, we'll designate the patients where they have to go. So how we do the pre-triaging, it is not something new, which we have been following it from last maybe 2 years. It's the same thing. The symptoms we ask them: fever, cough, breathlessness, sore throat, and vital signs. And his travel no longer required. In fact, India is in red list now, so we don't have to go anywhere. So, and no one is going to come back to India also. So history of contact and any comorbidities, and then we take a decision whether to isolate the patient, whether to send back the patient for home quarantine, or shift back to normal ED. So as being an emergency physician, we take a tough call sometimes regarding the resuscitation, whether to resuscitate the unwitnessed RS, or should we call off the resuscitation. And a separate triage is also, we have put it for extreme patients, and we code them like a blue and gray, where decision to resuscitate is made on case-to-case basis. So as in conclusion, so each and every year should create a contingency plan to pre-triage the COVID-19 patient to limit the spread of the disease, especially to the healthcare workers. So when it comes to recent advancements, the first one is the pegylated interferon alpha 2b. It is nothing. It is not a new drug. It is alpha interferon. We just give it for hepatitis B patients. But recently, most probably 10 days back, DCJ approved this for restricted emergency use. It is a single dose. We give it subcutaneously, and so how it helps is clinically it reduces the supplemental oxygen requirement. So, and it also reduces the viral load. As being an emergency physician, we should give this interference to the patient as soon as the patient is in emergency department, not to delay it, so that the oxygen supplementation requirement will come down. And the recent ICMR new guidelines is it was released 2 days back. When it comes to remdesivir, it has no role. But again, it is always a controversial since the day one onwards. So it plays no role if you start remdesivir after 10 days, and it should not be used at home settings and not on patients who are having SATs more than 94%. When it comes to convalescent plasma, it also has no role if you use it after 7 days. But you have to choose the proper convalescent plasma, which has high titer donor plasma. And again, the tocilizumab, it is always off-label use. So preferably you give it within 24 to 48 hours. So then this was recently approved by FDA, baricitinib in combination with remdesivir. And one more thing, we should not give baricitinib alone. We have to give it always remdesivir, combined with remdesivir. So the mechanism of action is, it is a Janus kinase inhibitor, which blocks the specific family of enzymes interfering with the pathway that leads to the inflammation. So when do we give this, what are the indications to give this combination therapy? So the patients who are diagnosed COVID-19 either by suspected or laboratory confirmed, and who requires NIV support or invasive mechanical ventilation, or patients who are going for ECMO. So it is shown to reduce the recovery within 29 days after initial treatment. So these are all the recent advancements. But when it comes to the vaccination, India has started the vaccination from most probably from February. But till now, the Covaxin, the the population who received the Covaxin, nearly 1.1 crore people has received a Covaxin. Out of among them, only 695% people has tested positive again, and the Covishield was given to 11.6 crore people. Out of among them, 5,414 people were tested positive. So it is always so it's better to take the vaccine. It is not a cure, but it is only to decrease the viral replication when you take the vaccine. So thank you. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bharat. So now quickly moving on to the questions from the audience. We have one question. Does this vaccine help against the new variant, what we are seeing? I think Dr. Mona Lisa ma'am can answer this question.
As in our experience in the second wave, we have seen patients who have already taken the second dose of the vaccine, and even after 8 weeks, they developed a severe disease and they went into ARDS. But it which could indicate towards a phenomenon of immune escape. But definitely, the severity of the disease in the other patients was less who were vaccinated who had the disease, and it indicates that the vaccine definitely decreases the severity of the disease in most of the cases. So even if there is the phenomenon of immune escape with these variants, the vaccine would definitely provide an approach by decreasing the severity of the disease in these patients.
Okay. We have next question. The question is, there are studies that, there are rumors which says that the triple mutant isn't picked up by the regular RT-PCR test, what we are doing. Is it true?
Further, more studies need to be put into it, but as of now, there can be definitely these variants can be missed by the RT-PCR. So we should put not only, and also as we know that the RT-PCR is only 70% sensitive, and there are various issues with false negative. So we should put all things like the clinical signs and symptoms, the exposure history, and the radiological signs, inflammatory markers, all put together. We should consider. And if these patients, all these put together indicate towards then COVID, and all the patients with SARI who are having the symptoms then we can put them the isolation precautions and treat them as COVID patients, because there are definitely chances that the variant may be missed upon the RT-PCR.
There is another question, ma'am. Double mutant and now the triple mutant. What is the way forward with these mutations, and when will this pandemic come under any control?
Double mutant was the one which was circulating, and now that we have come across the triple mutant as well. But there are many other variants also circulating. So the way forward would be as soon as we can ramp up the vaccines and we develop a herd immunity like about 70%, then we would be able to get over this second wave, and hopefully we will not have a third wave if we have enough of the herd immunity. So that we look forward to it. And even the vaccines should be further modified to include the newer variants into it by genetic engineering, so that they protect the immune escape phenomenon is also, impact of it is decreased. So it does help, and it would be the way forward by improving the vaccines and increasing the rate of vaccination.
Another question, what are the strategies to tackle the current scenario? I think Dr. Suresh, you can answer this.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. First of all, I thank you for the thank you, Dr. Sahu and Dr. Bharat, for the wonderful talk given by both of you. Uh, and first of all, a big salute to the all the frontline workers, especially emergency patient and those from the critical care department, who are fighting against the disease in the isolation zones as well as and suffering themselves. And you can see on the shop floor, like we are seeing daily about 20 to 22 cases in a shift, and we don't know the viral load. Like how much they are carrying, and especially aerosol generating procedure, and then we are getting exposed. I think first and foremost priority is please protect yourself. Okay, again, you have the colleagues on your floor. Okay, and I assume that always, like each of the colleague on the floor, they might be carrying infection, which they might be not showing any symptoms as such, but always please wear protective. I think again we had a face mask fatigue and then PPE fatigue. I think how many of you are wearing PPE when you're going for aerosol generating procedure, when you're attending? I think absolutely. I think that is a fatigue which we had developed over the period of time, like over 6 to 8 months. But I assume that whenever you're doing any procedure, please protect yourself. Please wear proper PPE, especially N95 mask. Especially when you're doing any procedure, please wear mask. And then that, I think itself will save you. Okay, this is at work, and what about your family? Again, you're carrying this to to home. And I assume, like even now we are getting so many calls, like so please arrange a bed for one of my family member. So I think at any time you see each one of our family members are getting affected too. Please put forth in this mind, and then please wear appropriate PPE, so that at least you should be careful yourself, so that at least we can define the policies later. Then to that, I think you should protect yourself, right? My foremost priority is please protect yourself. And then another one, as Dr. Bharat said, on at the hospital setup, dynamic triaging in ER. Yes, you can put forward two model, one for the non-COVID stuff and then another for the COVID zone. And you need to again please wear PPE when you're going to triage the patients, even at the entrance of your ED or even outside. If you have any drive-ins for ambulance, like please wear PPE and then go quickly retriage. If they are having any suspected or confirmed COVID-19, then you take them to appropriate zone and then treat appropriately. And again, there is a scenario, like we are getting so many calls, like there are two types of patients. Like one is with COVID pneumonitis requiring oxygen support, that respiratory support, that is NIV, either ventilation. We need to optimize our ICU facility as well. I do have around 42 bedded ICU. Again, 30 to 32 are on oxygen. The patients with comorbids, especially diabetes, and we are seeing like one or two cases of DKA. That doesn't require oxygen support, but they do need the infusion pumps. Like, so at that time, I'm not going to waste the ICU bed. I think either I can convince the consultant and put them in a high dependency unit, okay, instead of ICU bed, which we can give to any young person who is suffering with COVID pneumonitis, those who require respiratory support. Optimal utilization of ICU beds is very much mandatory, as well as ER beds. Okay, you can give to the best those who have less morbidity or outcome. Yep.
So now that there is general scarcity of oxygen, how do you optimize the oxygen administration and its use in the hospital with patients with respiratory failure? Dr. Suresh?
Yeah, well, clinically, I think we can divide the cases into mild, moderate, severe. I think all of you are familiar. I don't want to touch in depth into it. But moderate cases, I think those who are having SATs, between 90 to 94 on air. So you can either start with the nasal prongs and then you can escalate to face mask and then to NRBM. Severe cases, obviously, they require the ventilator or NIV support. Again, you can utilize, like we tend to not to give the stabilize the patient. Like initial 15 minutes, please try to be with the patient. Okay, give the support to management, either a steroid, short-acting steroid, or NEBs, so that it could relieve a bit of bronchospasm, which can decrease the oxygen necessity. So in that, try to be there. Okay, optimize your oxygen requirement. Okay, just after your initial evaluation, and again you just remonitor him after 15 minutes of your supplemental oxygen. If then you can cut down the oxygen requirement. And now the concept is even recommended by Government of India, like oxygen monitoring committee. I think we need to have this at each of your facility. This could comprise of your hospital administrator, and then your head of respiratory medicine, and then head of intensive care unit. Of course, your head of emergency medicine can be the part of it, and then nursing superintendent. The thing is, I mean, before the shift and then at the end of the shift, or in the morning and evening or every 6th hour, you need to monitor the oxygen requirement of the entire hospital. You need to generate the report so that how much oxygen is getting utilized in the entire hospital, okay, that we can have an idea. With this, I think we can sort out the problem. And again, you need to have, of course, if you have a tertiary care setup with multiple units, you need to know the bed strength and oxygen requirement as well as the supply at the different units, and the early decision at the triage itself, you can shift them immediately. Okay. Yeah.
Moving on to the next question. How do we suspect that the patient has a new strain during the triaging in the ED? And if you suspect that the patient is infected with triple mutant, do you isolate them from the other COVID patients? I think Dr. Bharat can take up this.
Yes, madam. Currently, it is very difficult to suspect which patient is having what type of mutation. So even though, but few papers are saying the patients who are showing up in emergency with triple mutant virus, you just have to ask the simple question. Well, the question is, since when did you got positive, and after how many days you started having breathing difficulty? If the patient, usually till now, the dual mutation and the previous mutation, till now the patient starts having breathing difficulty after 7 days. But the new triple mutant virus, the people who are showing up in emergency, they just give you a simple history. I started breathing difficulty after second day of, most probably second day or third day of tested positive. So can we isolate them from the other COVID patients? I don't think so, madam. At this point, there are no studies showing that you have to isolate them from other COVID patients.
Okay.
And we need more extensive study on this, madam. As madam said, we need more genomic sequencing. That is the only, we have to think 2 times much faster than the virus. So then only we can go forward in the future. Otherwise, if we don't go for it, the next 9 months, we need to go for another vaccine. The vaccines, what we are having right now, it will last for another 9 months. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Moving on to the next question. We have, what are the indications for starting baricitinib and how does it work?
Yes, madam. The baricitinib, it should not be given alone. So we just have to always give it with remdesivir. So we give it to the patients who are moderate to severe, who got tested positive, and who need oxygen supplementation, who are on NIV or invasive ventilation, and who are we going to put them on ECMO. And how does it work? As I have already said, it blocks it inhibits Janus kinase, okay, which blocks the specific enzyme inhibitors with the pathways leading to the inflammatory response. So more or less, we just have to memorize it. It blocks the Janus kinase.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you, doctors, and thank you, audience, for joining us. And we do look forward for your active participation onto the next session as well.
Yes, madam. I have one more thing to say. And 2 days back, they have detected one more strain, Sri Lankan strain. Okay, it was detected. It was found in Sri Lanka. And they say this strain is more advanced, more lethal than triple mutant virus. So the virus is thinking so fast, and it is spreading very fast. So that's all.
Yeah. So that summarizes that we have to think faster than the virus and work faster than the virus it is doing the thing. So thank you everyone for joining us, and let's meet onto the next webinar next week. Thank you everyone.